Hello, John Williams, and welcome to Words That Change Lives. It's great to have you on.
Hi, Helen. Thanks very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. So, in this episode, this is a head to head episode where we have a debate and discussion around different angles on a topic. And today's topic is AI versus humans. And as I've been following you on social media for quite some time now, I couldn't think of a better person to have this discussion with because I'm sure there's lots and lots of interesting angles and things that we can talk about with this. So, I think to start, what I'd love to know is where this passion came from for you with regards to AI and how that's kind of featured in your journey.
I started out my career in technology. So I was a software developer. I was a real geek when I was younger. Got into computers when I was 15, when home computers were just invented, basically. And started programming them, got my first job, worked in special effects software and automation. I was really excited about the idea of building a robot or something that does something without human input. I found that really exciting. And so I worked at an automation company. That was one of the things I did, and wrote automation software for TV studios like the BBC.
Oh.
And then that was sold all around the world. I was working for a company that developed it, and then worked on video on the internet. And I always had I was always a futurist. I think I was always somebody who wanted to live about 5 years from now. I wanted that, or maybe a bit longer, like jetpacks and amazing speed broadband and instant everything and virtual reality. And I mean, it's kind of, for someone like me, it's kind of frustrating how slow sometimes the world
Mm.
moves. So I think I feel it's a really big shift. And if you follow technology as much as I have my whole life, I'm not really a technologist anymore because I help people, market themselves basically now. But as a technologist, what I realized is that in the old days, technology, you had to spell everything out. You used to have to say, please do this, followed by this, followed by this. And you had to put it in the computer's language. Otherwise, it would just go like, error. I don't understand what you mean. You can't go to Microsoft Word and say, like, make me a document that just looks cool, right? You couldn't do that until literally 1 year ago. And then
Mm.
suddenly they found this breakthrough on AI, and we're at a point where you can just talk to it like a human. Doesn't always 100% work yet, but it's such a profound shift. I think we will look back on pre-2023 days, which is where it really took off, as just the Stone Age technologically.
Yeah, it really feels like that for me. I'm quite new to the world of AI. I'm dipping my toe in with things like ChatGPT, but I've seen online that you experiment with lots of things. Like I've seen recently a translation video
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're speaking in a different language, which is just incredible. And also, is it Mid Journey?
Yeah, Midjourney is probably the best image generator. It's still out there, and it creates incredible images just from a text prompt. You just say, "Show me an image of whatever, describe it," and then it will generate it.
Which is absolutely incredible, but also kind of scary. They still haven't got hands right, have they?
Yeah, and I think there's something when you see draw a human without hands, or where people's hands, are supposed to be clasped, but they're joined together, and it just goes like, "There you go," and you go like, "Well, that's not right. That's really disturbing." You get an insight into For me, it's a sign of why people are scared about AI, because creating an image is relatively harmless, but when AI is connected to everything in your life and it makes mistakes and goes like, "There you go," and in the process, it's done something truly terrible. It's dispassionate. It's not that an evil AI is going to kill us. It's that actually it will just accidentally do something that it thought was the right thing and kill all humans. Maybe this is the extreme version, but there are people who are very worried about AI.
Yeah. No.
So you get a little glimpse of it when you see those really disturbing images that Midjourney occasionally throws out by accident.
Yeah, there's something a little bit creepy, a little bit eerie about it, I think, isn't it? I think because the images that are created, and I saw one was a party in America with young adults with the red cups, and on first glance they look absolutely real, but then when you look closer, there's all sorts of issues and problems, and it's because it
Yeah.
looks so real, and yet it isn't. It's something that happens within the human mind, I think, that creates a little bit of fear.
Yeah, yeah. There's something very instinctive about us when you see a human, and there is one of the challenges, unfortunately for disabled people, that if we see
Mm.
somebody but something doesn't look right, there's a kind of instinctual concern in us initially until we kind
Mm.
of override that and go, okay, this is nothing to
Yeah.
be worried about.
But the reason why we're talking today is because, obviously, in my background, in my studies, in my career, was in psychology within business. And I had a particular interest in evolutionary psychology. And along the way, helping senior leaders to deliver complex, dry, boring messages, mainly introverted technical leaders. In interesting ways, I picked up the skill of storytelling. And I was very fascinated by that because it is ingrained within the human DNA to be able to tell stories. It's part of how we have evolved and how we've created meaning. And so, a big part of what I do is help people to use that skill. Right. And I think what will be interesting when we talk today is how AI plays a part in that. But I know that you do public speaking. I know that you are a lover of stories as well. Where has storytelling featured for you in your career and how you're actually using that now? Not from an AI perspective, and we'll move on to AI in a minute, but where's that featured for you?
Well, what I've realized is that I heard somebody describe stories as hypnotic, and
Mm,
they put us into a slight hypnotic trance, and then we're kind of released at the end of the story. And in fact, hypnosis is often stories that are unfinished and incomplete, and they talk about open loops in hypnosis. So they start telling you a story, and then they cut to a different story, and part of your brain is going like, wait, what happened to the person at the beginning? And so you're a little bit spaced out, and then while you're spaced out, they stuff in your subconscious, as Richard
mm,
Bandler put it. I did his NLP training. He used a slightly ruder word than stuff, and that's how hypnosis works. So stories are very powerful, and I remember reading in *Sapiens* that Yuval Noah Harari, is his name, was
yeah,
talking about how basically gossip enabled humans to dominate the earth.
that's
And
exactly right.
gossip is basically stories, because there's a cap on how large a community of animals you can have
It's about
if you don't
150
have
for humans.
language.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, the Dunbar number of
Yes.
150. Like, you can't go beyond that, because otherwise you no longer know everybody. And so
Hmm.
what do you do if there's 150 people in your community, for instance? How do you know who to trust, who to like leave with your child, or to leave with your assets, or to whatever it might be, or to do a favor and hope that they'll do you the favor back, give them some food where they give you food back? And the reason is gossip. So gossip is basically stories like, did you hear about Steve?
Yeah.
Sarah gave
Yes.
Steve, the baby to watch, and look what happened to the baby. And he goes, oh no, what happened? So that's storytelling, and those stories allowed us to be able to manage bigger communities, so that we could form into cities and countries and
That's
everything
right.
else. And and
That's right.
and that's my understanding. So
It
it's
is.
important stuff.
Yeah, it enabled us to make meaning and have support belief systems around things that we didn't understand,
Yeah,
life, death, thunder, lightning, the sun, the stars, and all the stories that came to create a feeling of safety within communities, of
yeah.
passing down information because we didn't have ways of writing until I can never pronounce it right, Mesopotamians.
Oh
Was it the
yeah,
Yeah, they started writing,
Mesopotamians.
but before then we didn't have ways to. It's a way of memorizing things and passing things down from generation to generation. And so we have this, I really do feel this intrinsic, innate skill. Everybody does, even if we think we're
Mm,
not good at public speaking or we're not good at communicating, we actually have that as a skill. And
yeah.
I really do believe that that's a skill that would take many, 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 many generations to die out. I mean, we're talking a very, very, very long way in the future. And I think that's why I wanted to talk to you about this
Mm.
today, because what I'd love to know is how good is AI at storytelling?
I think it's very good, and I think I've been fascinated by psychology and psychotherapy since I was about 13 or something, and how humans work. And you said that stories help us make meaning. And Dorothy Rowe, who's a psychologist, I thought was really interesting, wrote a lot of books. And she said, we are meaning-making machines.
Mm.
And stories are how we do that. And the stories we tell ourselves about the world will influence how we see the world. And in fact, will influence our experience of life. If we have a story in our mind about a certain kind of person or a certain gender or a certain country, it will absolutely affect your experience of those things in real life. So it's really important. And I think we, talking about hypnosis and persuasion, I think it's a topic I find very interesting, and stories are a big part of that. And Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI that created ChatGPT and DALL-E, and is probably one of the most remarkable people working in technology today, he said that he thinks AI will achieve superhuman level persuasion before they get to AGI. So AGI is the sort of general intelligence where the AI can actually infer things, but it hasn't been trained on. And we're not there yet. So that's the breakthrough moment when basically an AI is a bit more like a human, because it can basically just think its way through things that it's not even heard of before and make conclusions. So everyone's kind of excited, stroke terrified at that moment. But anyway, he says before we even get there, we will get superhuman persuasion. And I think that's very true. I think people underestimate how malleable we are. And I see it. I can see people and how they're persuaded, how I'm persuaded, how I'm influenced by what's in the media, by what's the current thing, in the news, about what the BBC or whoever it is decides is the story or isn't the story. And then people will just run with that. And then they will run with it continuously in the face of masses of evidence to the contrary of what they've decided. And so what I believe is that humans actually are very persuadable. All of us are. And some more than others, but I like to think I'm a bit better at picking through the truth, but we probably all do. But I think AI is going to get very good at persuading people, because when you can absorb like all the world's copywriting books, and copywriting is one of the things I help people with, and you've got all the copywriting books and all the copywriting ever done in history, right? Because it's got every sales letter that's ever been done, that's ever been famous. It also knows everything about NLP and hypnosis. It knows, because it's been trained on that, every methodology of Robert Cialdini, who talked about persuasion and all the different parts that add up to persuasion. And so, of course, it's going to be able to persuade people, and also it will get feedback. So it will be able to present you a story. Now, at the moment, it doesn't work like this. You have to prompt it and it tells you something. But if somebody decides to create an AI which is designed to persuade you, and it has a feedback loop where it knows, like, oh, if I put it this way, John presses the like button or whatever, it's going to learn really quickly. And we are in fact seeing AI, girlfriends, boyfriends that people are literally falling in love with.
Yeah,
And
can we just talk
terrifying,
about that?
frankly.
That's Replica, right?
Replica, yeah. So I run this event in London about AI called AIQ, and I talked about Replica and showed these screenshots of people on Reddit talking about how they were heartbroken because they did a software update that broke the personality of their boyfriend or girlfriend. And you might think, oh God, how sad are these people? But it's only just begun. You mentioned Midjourney a while ago. If you look at the course of Midjourney, from misshapen faces and one finger and all that kind of stuff, and now it's rendering pretty much perfect human beings. It still occasionally gets fingers wrong for some reason, but otherwise perfect human beings. But not just perfect, but with the right depth of field effect. You can tell it the film you want to emulate, the lighting you want to emulate, a director you want to emulate, or photographer. So think of that for the AI girlfriend and the rate that is progressing at, and the rate, for instance, as a parallel, ChatGPT is progressing at. Then these AI girlfriends are going to be, or boyfriends. I don't know why I'm imagining it's mostly men, because I don't think it is. I mean, certainly in some of those examples I saw, it was equal men and women who are, heartbroken. And I think that is it's going to be incredibly addictive, incredibly
Yeah,
addictive.
I know, because I mean that's meeting a need of a gap in human connection and
Yeah,
isolation, which is is rife in the world right now. So it is meeting a
yeah,
need, right? I
yeah.
just wonder, as you're talking, it feels like, the human mind has a lot of catching up to do. So the human mind is not capable of absorbing the whole internet in one place. And so therefore understanding about evolutionary psychology and NLP and how to tell a story and how to persuade people. What will happen, and this is just these questions are coming up, to public speaking? Will we still have a need for a human being to stand on a stage and persuade us or influence us or inspire or motivate us, when we could have that in another way from an artificial life form?
I think the change from AI are going to be really dramatic. But I actually think, some people, I think it was Sam Altman who was sort of hinting in one of his interviews in passing that life will be unrecognizable in 3 years. Somebody else said in 18 months it's going to be dramatically different. It does worry me at how fast things are going to change. And right now, people are thinking, like, what are you talking about? I haven't even logged into ChatGPT. How is it affecting me? But it's when we see things like Hey Jen, that app you were talking about that translates me into any language, and that language is perfect because
Yes.
everybody spoke the individual. I spoke like 6 languages in 3 minutes and using this translation app. Everybody who spoke that language went, it's perfect. And my Turkish friend said, like, that's brilliant Turkish with just a little bit of a sort of royal family accent in there. And we're like, wow. And it's just my mouth saying it and my lips sync to it. Things will get very, very strange over the next couple of years in a way that I think people haven't quite got their head around. And I think Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI, thinks that it will kind of end work as we know it, because one of his other companies is a cryptocurrency and a crypto identity app called WorldCoin, which I went and had my eyeball scanned by WorldCoin in order to uniquely identify me as a human being. And then you'll be able to use that to vote because no two people will have the same iris scan, basically. So you can maintain anonymity if you want to, but it gives you unique identity. But the reason why he's passionate about that is because he thinks the world is going to need universal basic income, i.e., we will get paid by the government every month for doing nothing because work will go away. So that's what I'm reading between the lines, because otherwise, why would this man his three passions are fusion reactors, nuclear fusion, AI, and crypto identity, which will enable universal basic income. And he's one of the smartest guys you've ever seen. So you're like, okay, that's interesting. So he thinks we're going to need a lot of power to run the AI computers. AI is going to do everything, and then we'll just get money coming in. So what is going to happen then, to answer your question, I'm coming a long way around it, is that the only thing that will matter will be real humans. So I can if I need a pep talk in the morning, sometimes I deliberately listen to a particular podcast or watch a video or listen to an audiobook because I think I want to be G'd up to like
Mhm.
go and really do a lot of marketing today, or want to be like have my mind blown to inspire me for writing for my next book or whatever it is, and I'll choose accordingly. You'll be able to just dial that in and just prompt it, and I mean we're almost there right now. But then I think what will happen is the real human experiences will become artisanal. So in the same way that Tesco's churns out, 57 different types of cheese that are none of which are terribly remarkable. Now there's a bunch of people who want to actually have the most ridiculously expensive cheese. And rather than buying, generic backpack, they want a handmade leather backpack, but it has a story behind it. And the story is, the story of the company is important than anything else. So this man was like homeless and he started a charity in Peru and he started making these backpacks and he created it according to the traditional design of that area of Peru. And now it's become this fashionable brand. And that story is what makes you want to own it.
Mhm.
So when you look at Midjourney and go like, wow, that is like a work of art. It's shocking. It's profound. It's beautiful. But there isn't the same instinct to print it out and put it on the wall.
Mm.
And the reason why is there's no story behind it, because
Mhm.
it's just like generated.
I
And what we
see.
really want in art is we want the story. You know, no one can think of Van Gogh without thinking of his story, and, you know, tragic as it was, or Leonardo da Vinci. But anyone, it's and the music we're into is often about the story. You know, we intimately know the stories of the people we are most passionate about.
Mm.
And so without the story, it doesn't work. So I think actually what will happen is we will want all the more to go and see a human. And we'll probably, that will be, you know, it's part of the reason I started an in-person event is like when everyone's doing Zoom, you know, people invite me to network events on Zoom. And I go like, there's no way I'm turning up to that. I spend a lot of my time on Zoom anyway, running my courses and coaching clients. So I'm not going to turn up on another one for fun. So I want to be in a room. I want to be in a room, have a drink, meet random strangers, have serendipity, and not be looking at a screen. And I think in a similar way, AI will heighten that. It will make story more important, real story more important. Now, whether some years from now, I think, you know, 100 years from now, all bets are off. It's absolutely impossible for anybody to predict what's going to happen. So there may well be AI personalities that we feel that attachment with, because in the same way that people feel an attachment to an 8-bit game, like Mario Kart or something, you know, with 8-bit graphics, and they have, you know, I've got a T-shirt of like an 8-bit. You can see the pixels like on it, and it's retro and it's cool. I think people will have. That's quite possible that that will happen with an AI. You know, there may be a classic AI girlfriend or an AI pop star could be possible, and there is a story around that, and maybe at some point there's a scandal and they say something terrible, but they come back from that and apologize, a bit like a human does. So sometime down the line, even that might go away. But for the near future, the story behind things and knowing that there's a real human involved is going to have a huge amount of value.
I love the way that you say it's artisanal, you know, that's already
Yeah,
happening with the breads and the cheeses and the things like
yeah,
that, and it will happen with humans. And it's just reminding me of all those futuristic films I've seen, like Ready Player One, and you know,
yeah.
the films like that, the books I've read, where there are real world markets with human beings providing their wisdom in amongst all of the other things that are in a virtual reality space. It's kind of reminding me of that. It does feel slightly dystopian,
Yeah.
but you've mentioned story there quite a lot. And I think that what we can do in this discussion is, you know, rather than let this speed train run away from us, we can harness the benefits of it now, particularly if we run our own businesses, which we do. And I know that you help people to do. So what I'd love to know is like, how are you and how can we use AI to support us now for
Yeah.
in the future? What can we be doing? For those that may not know anything about AI, how are you using it with your clients or helping your clients become aware of how to use it to enhance what they're doing?
So I'm using it as a tool at the most basic level. So I generate images using Midjourney. Like I just created a sales page for a course I'm launching called the Crazy Successful Formula. And I wanted a kind of image of stuff in the background behind my photo, but looked like a sort of random sketch of creative ideas. And it just generated one on Midjourney and it looks great. So I use it in that way. It's quite a practical way. I've stopped using stock image libraries, for instance. I just generate the images. I do pay for Midjourney, so it still costs me money for that. And I use ChatGPT for all sorts of things. It's largely replaced Google, unless I'm trying to find somebody's website. If I want to find an answer, I'll ask ChatGPT. And you have to double check what it says because it will hallucinate answers sometimes. But it's really useful. I'm working on another book called Crazy Successful, funnily enough, which I have a book deal for, and it should come out at the end of 2024. And I've always wanted to have a book researcher. Never got round to hiring one when I was up against a deadline and writing my previous books. And it's incredibly useful for that. And one of the things I want to do is find the evidence base for some of the things I'm saying, like, because I'm talking about creativity and how creative and entrepreneurial people actually often have either a neurodiversity or they have sort of somewhere in the mild mental health issues range, depression, anxiety, which I've had in my past. And why is there a connection? And that what if we actually solve it? Although those things can be very difficult and very painful, sometimes they often come with an advantage. And if you can lean into the advantage, then you can become crazy successful. So that's the kind of concept. So
I
I'm
love it.
looking for, the evidence base, like, is there any evidence that supports this, that, the other? And I'm reading books as well to find things out. It's really useful for that. If I want to find a quote, it's useful. But I asked it a while back when I was writing my proposal. I asked it for quotes for famous entrepreneurs or creative or famous people generally who are very successful, who made the case that being a bit crazy could be helpful, being a bit different, unconventional, quirky, or even, as I say, having some mental health problems. And it generated these quotes. And there was one from Maya Angelou, and I thought, that is perfect. That is good. I'm going to close the proposal with that. And then I wrote this, and I woke up in the morning before I sent it off, and I went like, that doesn't sound like Maya Angelou. She's a great writer. And I went back to ChatGPT and said, that quote from Maya Angelou, is that really from Maya Angelou? And he went, no, sorry, must have just made it up. And I went like, wait a minute, what about that other one from, I can't remember who it was, somebody else. And I think it was Mary Oliver. It goes like, she went, no, it's not really. So there were one or two real ones, but it just kind of, it didn't actually put it like that. But, that's the voiceover. It's like, nah. Sorry, cool, bang to right, gov.
You got me.
Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute. So it was a wake up moment. It doesn't mean it has no value. The problem is it doesn't know, when you ask it for an answer, it will generate an answer.
Yeah.
It doesn't always know the difference between generating an answer. When you're saying like, I want this to be an answer that is out there in the world that's quoted, it doesn't always understand that. So it kind of generates a quote that sounds like Maya Angelou that gives you what you want. So you have to double check all these things.
Yeah.
Google them, basically.
As I say, I've just really in the last 6 months started using ChatGPT. I really want to get onto Midjourney. Actually, I will do that. There's another. It's another one. Is it by Adobe? It's another one as
well.
Yes,
Firefly, and Firefly. I think it is. And that does some remarkable stuff as well. There is a level beyond this, which is that's me just kind of going using it as a simple tool. But at the time of us recording it, they've just released this new feature where you can basically build a bot around ChatGPT, and that will allow you to have something that can provide a particular function. So, for instance, one of the things I help people do is find their signature offer, their main thing that's going to make them money in their business, built around their expertise, what's different about them. And I also help people find how to communicate that message in a way that lands with their target market. And it takes time for people to, when I start teaching people that, it takes several iterations, people to go like, oh, okay. And normally their first attempt is wrong. So rather than me having to do that, I know that AI can now coach people through that process. It can be a coach, and it can coach you on whatever you want. And you can now, with this sort of bot feature, it's called Build a GPT, build your own AI effectively. You can preload it with your content. So for instance, you can preload it with all my books, and then it can coach you using my kind of language. Yeah, I can also point at a transcript of everything I've ever recorded, doing this stuff for 18 years now. So there's a lot of content out there. And you can point at your website with all your blog content. You just suck all that up and then go like, now I'm going to ask it a question, and it will answer basically a pretty good version of what I would come up with. So I think that it's early days for that kind of functionality. And there are some apps out there already which will probably be killed by the latest developments by OpenAI itself. But there are some apps out there designed to do that, to answer questions. You can upload a PDF and then quiz it about the PDF. I think that's going to be enormously helpful for entrepreneurs. And for instance, you could create a story crafting bot that coaches people through the process of writing a story about whatever it might be.
That's pretty incredible. I wasn't aware of that, but it makes sense as a logical next step. Um, yeah, that's actually quite mind blowing. I'm using
Yeah.
it to do some sales pages and things like that. And I was
Mm,
thinking as you were talking, what am I not using it for at the moment?
mm,
Because I trust my mind more, is things like writing a talk, writing a keynote
yeah.
talk. So putting that structure together, putting the content in it for that. I wouldn't use something like ChatGPT for that, but I
Yeah.
might use it for putting in enough prompts to create a problem that's going to be solved in a challenge, and then a sales page and some content
Mm,
around that I can tweak. That's what I am using it for. And I must admit, I
yeah.
did that the other day, and I did create a challenge, a full challenge in about 30 minutes.
Really? Well, like a
With
5-day challenge, you mean?
Yeah,
Or
with all the
yeah.
content. And I did have some prompts. I got those prompts off someone else that I
Yeah.
thought I was following, but
You'll have to give me those.
yeah, but it created a whole new type of challenge that I hadn't even thought of. It's around learning a TEDx gig, which I'm going to be doing next year, but it's a whole new angle on it that I'd never even thought of. So I was like, wow, that's going to save me a lot of time.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually delivering something myself, I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to use something from ChatGPT. One, because it's probably like a script, and I don't deliver talks using a script. And two, I wouldn't trust it. And it's not me, it's not my own voice, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't want it to generate a story that you then read out, but it's a really good brainstorming tool. So when
True.
I was trying to come up with a subtitle for my book, the next book is, as I say, it's called Crazy Successful, and I really struggled to sum up a subtitle because it's quite a complex idea in there. And I came up with, and I think this was with a bit of help from ChatGPT, defy conformity, create the extraordinary. And
Okay.
I thought that was really exciting. And I think that whole thing didn't come from ChatGPT, but some of the words came from it, um, and it really helped. And it did help with some of the concepts. It was quite alarming when I wrote an early version of the proposal, and then I said, okay, this looks a bit dry at the moment. How do I kind of sex it up? And then, so what I did is I took the first few paragraphs and I pasted it into ChatGPT and said, rewrite this in the style of Anthony Bourdain, PJ O'Rourke, and I can't remember who, one or two other people who are sort of famous, or Kate, Sarah Knight, who wrote a bunch of books that sold very well. She's got a very good kind of colloquial style, and quite sweary, which I like. And so uh, I got it to and the Anthony Bourdain version was just brilliant. And for a while, in the end, I think I took it out, but for a while, because it took me 3 years to get this proposal finally nailed and then get a deal. But for a while, it had a line in there that was straight from ChatGPT, from impersonating Anthony Bourdain, which was one that's saying, like, you know, humans are all a wonderful cocktail of, of strengths and weaknesses and quirks and flaws, but boy, is it a good tasting cocktail. It was something like that. And I thought that's a great line. So I actually used that line somewhere
Mm.
in the first couple of paragraphs. So it's a really useful brainstorming tool and kind
Yeah.
of sparring partner for writing it. You wouldn't want it to write your finished version, I don't think.
There we go, right? So I think, for anybody worried that's listening, thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to be replaced in the next 18 months." It's
Yeah.
just not the case right now. It's definitely something to be thinking about for the future,
Well,
where human
yeah.
infrastructure will need to change, and how we run societies and civilizations will need to change. But for
Yeah.
now, we
But
can.
but but there's an interesting, humans won't be replaced because, well, I don't think. Like, you just can't guarantee anything more than about 10 years' time. But, Brian Eno, who is a massive hero of mine, is a music producer and a just cultural critic. Very interesting guy. He used to be in Roxy Music in the 90s. He invented ambient music, which is quite an achievement.
Mm,
And he said that now that the software, all the tools can create anything you want, like it's so easy to create music, for instance, now, that anybody can do it, really. If somebody shows you how to use the software for an hour or something, you can create it. And that's increasingly becoming, that's even more true with the help of AI. You know, anyone can create mid-journey stuff from a prompt. There is AI music coming. It's not quite here yet, but that will be really interesting too. But he says, now the tools take away the necessity to learn a craft. All that matters is taste. So the question is, do you have good taste or not? Because anybody can go into a studio. He says, I can take you into a studio right now, and with an hour of tuition, you could write a good piece of music. But he says to write a great piece of music is a whole different thing. And that's the difference. So taste will still matter. And you can generate stories, you can generate, you know, artwork and movies. If you look at something like Runway ML that creates entire movies, AI generated movies are coming where you'll just type a prompt and it will produce it. But you need the taste to be able to say, this is good or not good. Let's change the ending and so on. And that will be as valuable as ever.
That conjures up a whole nother question about taste, human beings and taste, and whether you can buy it or whether it's something you have, or, you know, all of that sort of stuff. But that is super interesting. Thank you so much, John, for this discussion. I think it's something that's really important, and there's so many places you can go with this. And I'm really actually intrigued about your program. You can remind us what that's called that you've got.
Yeah, so my main thing now is running this crazy successful formula, which is find what is different about you, how to create something unique in the world, and then all your marketing becomes an awful lot easier rather than just trying to struggle amongst a crowded niche.
I love that. I really love that. Yeah. You know, some of the things I do is a bit similar to that, but in a different way. But I think I certainly resonate with harnessing what makes your mind and your own unique personality part of who you are, and how you can use that to reach the people that are going to connect with you in this crazy world of, you know, people say saturated, in this consumer world that can seem saturated. That sounds amazing. So with all my guests that come on Words That Change Lives, I always finish with one question, and I'd love to know the answer to this one, John, which is, what words have changed your life?
Lots of different ones. I think some negative ones, but I think one that really stuck with me when I first started the kind of journey of self-development when I was 30 is I got really obsessed with Carl Rogers, who was an early pioneer of therapy. And he said, what is most personal is most general. And it's a really powerful thing for writers, because when you're trying to genericize things, you actually find it becomes very bland. It doesn't touch anybody. But if you tell a very personal story but do it with one eye on how this is relevant to other people, then you can really impact people. So that's why I put a lot of the personal into my books, into my talks, into my programs, because when I illustrate an example from me, it brings it to life in a way that I think everybody can understand.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. And I think some of, you know, if I think back to my wins and my successes in my career, it's due to doing that, actually. Which you know, which absolutely should be encouraged, and I love that very much. Thank you so much for coming on. And for anyone listening, I'd love you to be part of this conversation. What did you think about what we've spoken about today? What does it mean to you? You can use the hashtag on social media, Words That Change Lives, or you can tag myself in to any questions that you might have, or you can email me at hello@helenpackham.com. Let me know what you think. And I look forward to speaking to you next time on Words That Change Lives.